Hey everybody, welcome back to Three Acorn Bourbon. Doing another bite-sized bourbon review for you today. So last video, we covered the Ben Holiday Soft Red Wheat, nice wheater whiskey. Today we're going to cover a rye. The Michter's Straight Rye. Michter. They also have a 10-year Straight Rye. I don't have the funds for that one. We're just doing the US1 Straight Rye. Now, Michter's has a long history dating back to 1753 when it was founded in Pennsylvania by a Swiss Mennonite farmer. It's rumored that George Washington himself visited the distillery and purchased rye whiskey for his army during the Revolutionary War. It's one of America's oldest distilleries. The Michter's name as we know it today was actually established in 1950. The then owner combined his two sons' names, Michael and Peter, into Michter. I always hear it pronounced Michter. I think you'd be forgiven for Michter if it's Michael and Peter. Michter. I always hear it called Michter, and that's what I'm going to call it. Now, Michter's fell victim to Prohibition, just like many other distilleries. It reopened after Prohibition, but faced financial difficulties for decades. And the Michter's brand was almost lost forever until it was reestablished in the late 1900s. Michter's recently began distilling its own whiskey at two different distilleries in Kentucky. There's one at Shively and one at Fort Nelson. Michter's offers a variety of different aged whiskeys, some for more than a decade, though I don't think they have any bottles aged less than 4 years. Michter's is known for its rye whiskey. It's a nod to the Pennsylvania Dutch heritage. Rye whiskey is quickly becoming one of America's favorite spirits, as it was back in the day, and Michter's has played a huge role in rye's resurgence in America. Now, Michter's is a pretty small distillery compared to some of those Kentucky giants, but man, they have a very loyal following in the bourbon community. Now, I don't have many fun facts about the bourbon itself, so let's just get into the tasting notes. Alright, let's start with the nose. I mean, you certainly get the rye spice, but it's muted compared to a lot of ryes. It's actually kind of sweet. Some vanilla and caramel and citrusy fruits. I mean, there's oak, but there's also sweet butterscotch. Maybe a little dark fruit too, maybe a little cherry. It's a very bourbon-friendly rye whiskey. It's a really nice aroma. Let's get into the palate. Wow, that is sweeter than I remember. It's certainly the sweetest rye I own, probably the sweetest rye I've tasted. It's extremely sweet bourbon drinker friendly. You get a lot of caramel, a lot of vanilla, a lot of butterscotch. And there's certainly rye spice and oak in there, but it's really well balanced. You get a sweet cinnamon, almost like Applejack cereal, or like Red Hot's hot tamale, but without the heat. Man, I really wish it was higher proof. It's got a nice buttery mouthfeel. It doesn't have that sharp tingling you get from a lot of rye whiskeys. I mean, I don't think you'd be wrong to describe this whiskey as delicate, which is a bizarre thing to say about a rye. When I think rye, I think robust. If Wild Turkey is a rye drinker friendly bourbon, I would say this is a bourbon drinker friendly rye, if that makes sense. And on the finish, of course you get that rye spice and you get the oak, but that sweetness lingers. It's vanilla, caramel, butterscotch, a sweet cinnamon, a black pepper, but I would say Rare Breed has a stronger rye finish than this. It's in that weird overlap where I would describe it as having the best of both worlds, both bourbon and rye, but I think a real rye drinker might taste this and find it wanting. It's a nice sweet bourbon with some good rye spice, but it's certainly sweet and delicate for a rye whiskey. Well, that's all I wanted to cover today. It's one of Three Acorn Bourbon's rare rye whiskey bite-sized bourbon reviews. This Michter's single barrel US1 rye whiskey was great, and I highly recommend it to anyone. Well, that's it for today, folks, and remember, bourbon, it's made for sharing. So open your bottles, make some memories, and I'll catch you in the next one.